All right, perfect. No, thanks so much, Ivan and Trevor and everybody else that's there. I've gotten a little bit of sun from Australia. As you can see, I'm actually on I'm going to get into this, but I'm on my own little expedition up the west coast, heading north from Perth, and I'm kind of up in the northwest corner right now, so getting a lot of sun and enjoying the beautiful vistas and beaches along the way as well. So yeah, so the question is, can you still market, scale, and evolve your business during a crisis and economic downturn? For that answer, you'll have to stick around for my presentation, but I'll give you a hint. It is very, very likely that you can, right? It's just simply a matter of how you perform, how you build up the infrastructure, how you put everything in place, really, to be able to allow your business that capability to say, hey, we're digital, the world's digital, we need to make it work, right? And it's not going to work unless you really get aggressive, unless you really kind of design what I call the digital expedition to be able to do that. If you don't do that, well, guess what? You might not make it. You might not survive. There's things that will work, of course. You can still the same old, right? But as they say, you know, with change, with great change comes great leadership. So we need to make sure that we're actually making this work, that we're actually making things better for businesses. And that's what I call the digital challengers, is how do we actually understand what we want to accomplish here? How do we actually enable and leverage this as well? Because without it, again, we can open up huge possibilities here. I'm in Perth. A lot of you are from South Africa. You know, we've had guests from New Zealand and around the world as well, which is fantastic. So how do we actually leverage that to our business? And that's what I really want to get into as we go ahead with this. See if we can get the next slide. There we go. So what I'm going to be doing is going through what I call the digital expedition. And this is a giant worksheet. And I'm going to say that you can actually, where did I wanted to put it in the chat? I had a link that you'll actually be able to go to. But this maps out these 10 steps that you can take your business through, service-based, product-based, it doesn't really matter, to be able to enable that digital penetration, that digital adoption that most businesses currently don't have. They're really missing it, and they're really lagging for that as well. So if you want, go to bit.ly/digital expedition resources. You can grab yourself a worksheet, follow along the presentation, and we'll go from there. You can download it or whatever the case may be as well. So digital expedition resources. If you have any questions, please type in chat along the way. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end to be able to answer them as well, and go from there. So really we're talking about, like I said, the journey of discovery and opportunity. And really what's there is that you're already sitting on a mountain of value. Like, let's be honest, I'm not saying to pivot. I'm not saying to, you know, you have to redesign your business. It's not a matter of, you know, shifting or whatever the case, whatever terminology you use. You've got a massive amount of value right now in your business. And so this journey is really just about discovering that opportunity to say, how do I actually define that value in the digital age? Okay, and again, that's super critical here, because without it, we know that we might be missing a few things, right? So I've got 10 base camps to get you there. 10 steps along this process that we're going to go through. Obviously, there's not a lot of time here, so I don't have a lot of detail that I can go through. But again, if you follow along with that worksheet, it's a very good start to be able to do that. And where do we want to go with this? We want to go to the digital promised land, right? We've all heard it. We all know it exists. We've seen some businesses that are doing some amazing things in digital, and I'm going to go through a few of them as well as we get into it. We need to get there, all right? We've got a lot of value. We've got it in what we do right now. We need to get there, and that's how we're going to design what I call the 10 base camps. So the first one is very, very important, and this is basically taking a look at sense making, and that is using your expertise. Everybody has that expertise right now at this moment that you're using for your business every single day when you get up and help clients or help businesses or sell products or whatever the case may be. Everybody has that. We just need to give meaning to that. So if we look down here, what level are we at now? We can look at chaos, which is kind of what a lot of businesses are experiencing right about now. It's unimaginable, right? It's things that we're not sure that was going to happen. We're not really sure what to do or how to get out of them. Moving forward, it's complex, it's unmanageable. It's things that, you know what, this is a big challenge. And let's be perfectly honest, From a business perspective, it hasn't been easy. It does depend on what type of business you are. If you haven't engaged with that digital side of things, you're probably struggling a little bit more. So you might feel that it's a little bit complex, it's a little bit unmanageable. Then we can move into that stage a little bit higher in terms of unpredictable to predictable, right? Manageable, where we know that these are the steps that we can actually follow along. These are the steps that we need to be able to process. And then finally, known or fixable is basically saying, hey, we've got a plan. We've got an attack plan. We've got a clear strategy. We have an understanding of what really needs to happen here. So, let me know where you guys are at with that. Are you in chaos? Are you in complexity? Are you in knowable? Or are you in known as well? Because those are really important to understand, because then you can decide what you need to do next to be able to move forward as well. So right now, like, the opportunity is massive, but the businesses that are actually utilizing it is substantially smaller. And if we look at here, these are some stats from the UK and USA, but in the last 6 months, we've seen a huge spike in the UK in terms of using e-commerce during lockdown, right? So we've bumped it up from about 20% to about just under 35%, right? So 15% in the last 6 months. If we look at the US, not quite as big, but similar. It's bumped up from 17% to about 23%. So again, we've got some really good growth there. That's saying, okay, what do we need to do here? The challenge is that we're still only at about 35% maximum. On normal occasions, right? 20% of businesses have the capability to engage an audience around the world. Right? 20% of businesses, and I don't know if you're in that 20% or not, but that gives you a huge sort of perspective to say 80% of businesses still have a lot of ways to go to get to 20% of being adaptable into the digital space, to being able to penetrate that space, to be able to have those capabilities that allow you to connect with your audience and your customers anytime, any place, on demand, creating that value. Which I'm going to get into coming up very soon as well. So a massive, massive opportunity. In Australia, it's very similar. I don't have quite the same statistics, but we've seen a spike, right? This was before Easter, basically, and around Easter it's dropped, but it's continuing to move up as well. People are going to buy online. And again, I'm not just talking about, soap and towels and food and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking business services, right? And these are the businesses that really need to look at, how do we actually engage that? How do we move this properly forward with our business? Because if we don't, where's that going to leave us? So in terms of adoption or penetration, like, that's it, like 20%. That's, I don't know, it just blows my mind. The internet has been around for like 25 years. And I know most businesses aren't quite that old, but there's the whole learning curve thing where a lot of businesses before us have said, we're going to go digital. But guess what? Only 20% of them. So to me, it's like, wow, we need to get moving, right? And where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us to be able to say, hey, we're the digital leader, right? So if we're able to adopt, if we're able to create that infrastructure, that foundation for digital, we can become the digital leader as well. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, just sort of personal note to yourself, where do you think you are in terms of that capability? And I'm not talking just like a website with a contact us page. I'm talking about being able to deliver products and services online, digitally, around the clock, on demand, that sort of thing. So look at where you are. Are you, 1, I really need to get going, or am I like a 9 or a 10 where it's like, okay, this is pretty easy. I'm already generating revenue from around the world 24 hours a day. And that's a great business model that we all want to have. Now, if we look at here, this is what we've actually seen, this little snaggletooth right at the end. This is 5 years of growth in 3 months. Okay, so I showed you about the 20% adoption. Those businesses that have grown, like from 20 to 35%, for example, they've grown 3 months, they've had 5 years of growth in 3 months. So again, we got to look at how are we within that 20%? Are we adopting to digital, or are we just kind of letting it pass by? And what if you could have that massive amount of growth that none of these other companies are having? The 80%, guess what? they're not having that growth. The ones that are in the fight are the ones that are winning. And that's the critical ingredient here. If that's going to continue, we certainly can't hope so. There's obviously going to be some drop, but the majority of it is going digital. We've seen that in the behaviors of consumers, of business, B2B, B2C, it doesn't really matter. Again, the environment has changed, and we need to now adapt, not just to digital, but the way that products and services are both being offered. There's a fun little, I'm not sure if you can hear that, but why can't you have both? Porque no los dos, right? And I'm not Spanish, but what that means is that why can't you have both? Why can't you have a strong digital foundation along with a service-based business that gets you out into talking with people and that sort of thing, right? Connecting with people, because that's what's so important in business as well. It's not just having a, sitting behind an e-commerce engine and selling stuff, right? Let's be completely honest. A lot of us are in business because of the relationships, because of the communication that we can do as well. So we can have both. We're at sort of that precipice to say, this is what we can do. This is how we can actually move things forward with our business. We can have both. We can have a very strong digital presence that allows us the capability to extend the reach around the world, and we can do it with connecting with people as well, instantaneously, with larger groups, with larger audiences, that sort of thing. So it doesn't really matter if you're around the block, if you have like a little shop in a small town or whatever the case may be. Why not? Ask yourself, what if I could have customers from across the state or across the ocean or around the world or that sort of thing, right? So it really becomes a business objective, if of course you want to, but you do have that capability to say, I can do that. I can still have my neighborly business, my small little shop, but guess what? I can sell to people around the world. I can offer my services to people around the world. And guess what? Isn't that a tremendous opportunity for all of us? I believe so. All right, so can we actually, Basecamp number 2 is Inflection Economy. And we need to look at how do we actually move this forward, right? Can we make a difference in the economy? And a lot of us, and the previous speaker was talking a lot about that, the dive and then the recovery as well. I'm a strong believer that, guess what, if the economy is on a slope downwards, we can take action against that. I'm not saying we control the economy, let me get that straight. I'm saying we control our response, okay? We control how we actually engage our business with the economy. So we can do what's basically an inflection point, that's this point here, where the curve suddenly changes, where we can act upon those changes specifically. And in this case, it's by putting together a digital expedition. It's by saying, I want to make a change. These are the steps that I'm going to engage. These are the steps that I'm going to manage. This is how I can make the change. So it is very feasible, even despite the downward growth. And Australia here has entered officially a recession as well. It's a matter of what can you do with your business? What can you control versus what you can't control? I can't control the economy, but I can control my business. I can control how people understand and get to know my business, and I can bring my business through again this thick patch, these times of change, if I've got a plan, if I have something that actually works to be able to do that. And so we can do a couple things, right? We can start today, we can wait for tomorrow, we can wait for the day after tomorrow as well. It really becomes imperative. When are you going to take action, right? When is the best time to plant a tree? Sorry, let me back up here. When is the best time to plant a tree? Right, it was yesterday. Okay, when's the second best time? It's today. So you have to decide, when do I want to be able to do that? And that then determines when are you going to be able to progress off of that curve as well. You can do strategic, which is reinforcing success. You can do something which, sometimes it might work or it might feel like it's working, but it might also feel like you're really spinning your wheels, spinning your gears, and nothing's really happening because it's unstable. If you're just doing something to get by, to get to the next day, to just make the next sale, guess what? It's going to be unstable. Or you simply do nothing. I'll just wait and see. Do nothing, which is going to reinforce failure as well. So those are the three options that you can take with this in terms of how do I manage that business? How do I actually decide what it is that I want to be able to do? Where do you fit? Do you want to do strategic? Do you want to reinforce success? Do you want to do something just to kind of get by, or do you want to do nothing and just see what happens, right? And we kind of know what's going to happen then. So Basecamp number 3 is about signals and strategy. And this is really sort of understanding your audience to say, hey, these are the pieces that we need to be able to take along the path. So we need to be able to listen. What is our audience saying, right? We need to understand, there's a difference between listening and hearing, right? What is somebody actually telling me when I listen to them, as opposed to, oh, they just said this, and that's what they obviously must mean. It goes into our next step coming up very quickly. But clarity versus noise. A lot of times there's a lot of distractions, and there's a huge amount right now online and social and digital and everything else, right? It's not very clear what is good and what's bad and that sort of thing. There's just simply a lot of noise. So we have to be able to listen through this. We have to look at static versus slipstream, right? Can we smooth out what's going on? Can we get in contact with our audience? And one of the main ways to see this is, ask yourself, is your audience wearing noise canceling headphones? They're nice for the customer, right? Because they don't hear all this noise, but does that detract from us being able to actually engage with our audience as well? Because if we don't, that's where we're going to miss out. That's where we don't actually, again, if we're not listening, we're not hearing what they're actually telling us. So, if you've got a chance, what are the signals you're being sent? And again, sometimes these are very obvious, like they want to see more information. They want to get to know you. They want to understand, how your solution helps you. They want to see, examples of that and that sort of thing. So what are the signals? These are clear signals that, again, they're quite obvious. Sometimes, again, people might not necessarily articulate them, but it's something that it's very definitive that this is what they want. This is what they've asked me to deliver, and this is what I'm going to deliver as well. So again, quickly, if you got some time for your own notes or whatever, what are the signals you're being sent right now from your audience? And then we get into what I call the missing bullet strategy. And back in World War II, there was actually a lot of aircraft that went from England across into Europe and that sort of thing. And a lot of them weren't coming back, right? They're getting shot down. So what they decided to do was this big study to say, hey, how can we protect these aircraft so that they actually make it back? So when the aircraft landed, what they did is they had the scientists, the engineers rather, in their white lab coats, and they're busy counting bullet holes. So they go and they count all the bullet holes and that sort of thing around the whole entire aircraft. And what they noticed was that there weren't any bullet holes around here and around here. Whoops, sorry, an extra click. Or there weren't any bullet holes around here or here. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? That means we must, does that mean we put armor where the bullet holes are? What do you think? Like, do we put the armor? That's how we're going to fix the problem. We're going to prevent bullets going through the aircraft with armor. Or, do we put armor on the spots where there's no bullet holes? Any guesses? Well, the point is that the aircraft that came back didn't have the holes in these important places, right? In these critical places. So we couldn't actually measure that, is what I'm trying to say. So the ones that had bullet holes around the engines, around the cockpit, around the main fuselage, those aircraft didn't make it back. So putting armor on those spots, on the other spots rather, did absolutely nothing. So we need to look at what are the missing bullets? What are we not seeing here? And this is what really takes some time and some study of your audience in terms of what are they telling you, what are they saying. And again, it's not necessarily that they can articulate it. And again, we need to spend some time saying, well, where are these missing bullets? What are they not telling me, right? If they say they like your articles, be more specific, right? Ask the question of why or how, and you're able to understand a little bit further. It's something that they may not be able to articulate like that, like your best quality or your lowest price or your, whatever the case, service guarantee or whatever the case may be. They're looking for something that's always intangible, and we have to be aware of that. Otherwise, we're going to miss that opportunity. Now, digital transformation, right? This is basically sitting at an airport. If you can imagine, I know there's not a lot of that going on right now, but we need to look at how do we get from point A to point B. What do? We go to an airport and we sit in the terminal and we wait for the plane. And today you might be waiting a bit longer. But that's what we need to look at. How do we move from transactional to transformational? How do we get from that airport to our next destination, from Perth to Johannesburg? How do we do that? We have to sit at that airport. Otherwise, we're not going to do that. So what does that mean that we need? We need time and we need an approach. And we also need to be able to say, these are the tactics that I need now. These are the strategies that I need now. This is the vision that I need now. And this is the evolution that I need now. So, you know, how many businesses have actually taken the time to say, hey, these are some of the tactics that I'm working on right now. These are some of the strategies. This is my vision of the company down the road. And this is the evolution of the company further down the road as well. And that's why we need to sort of get past that shift as well in terms of our thinking, because we need to look at, yes, we need to get through this right now, this chasm, this gap, this, you know, do we need a life raft? Do we need a ladder to be able to get out of it? But we still need to be able to understand how we can move forward past that as well. Because if we're not thinking a little bit further, we're going to be doing this something, do something, right? That's sort of our head down, just don't, you know, let's get this stuff done as quickly as possible, or let's do what we can right now. That's, yes, obviously important, but we need to expand the blinders, which I'm going to show you how to do as well. So we need to understand where we are now, right? And that's what I call fear, learning, and growth. And this is really understanding what's important for us at this point in time, which is what I call the fear zone. Zone 1 is fears, because we are a lot of us, not everybody, we're scared. It's like, oh my God, I've lost a number of clients or customers. They've decided they don't want to spend anymore. Like, my business is going down or whatever. I don't know what I should do, basically. So we need to identify that, to say, this is how we're going to address that. And we do that by understanding the state. We do that by understanding the knowledge. We do that by looking at some symptoms, some tools, and being strategic and looking at outcomes. There's a lot to go into here, so I just kind of want to give you a quick overview. So we move from zone 1, which is the fear, to zone 2, which is learning. We've now got a good idea to say, hey, we can actually implement this. We can actually look at, these are the pieces that I need to be able to do. And just sort of from a perspective, this one is quite prevalent here, but we move from a how-to. So if we're trying to talk with our customer, we want to tell them now how to do something. We want to help them in the immediate, because we need them to get out of the chasm, out of this gap, whatever the case may be. Next, we need to look at, how should I do something? And then finally, could I, in zone number 3. In zone number 3, that's where the real growth occurs. But to get to it, we have to move into zone 1, and we have to recognize it too. Zone 1 is fear, zone 2 is learning, and zone 3 is growth. And unless we see that, unless we address it with a lot of these different steps, nothing's going to change. So again, we're just going to be doing something which isn't going to get us where we want to go. It might get us to the next day, but that's about it. So what does all this look like? Looks like a nice shiny triangle, right? And the shape of the triangle is really important, because we need to look at it in terms of how do we get from the base to the summit, back to the base as well. And just because you get to the base, the summit, all of us know that in business, it's not just getting to the summit, because what do you do then? Like, if you look at the Mount Everest expeditions or whatever the case may be, they didn't just stay at the summit, right? Like, that was only halfway there. The expedition was to get back down the other side. So yes, that's cool. And yes, we're at the top of Mount Everest and fantastic. Let's all get excited and rah, 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 right? But we still got to get home. And in this case, that means that there's still some steps that need to be taken to be able to understand those steps, so that we continue that momentum, so that we continue that growth, so that we continue being able to grow our digital business. Because if we miss that, we might, I don't know, fall off the summit, which is something that we don't want to do as well. And this is really what I call the digital expedition. So this is that base camp to say, how do we unwind this stuff? How do we start this journey? How do we actually put these pieces in place? And it's a concept I call the black wire. And this is a lot of the chaos that we all experience in digital with our websites and SEO and social media and content and everything, right? bloody confusing, even for myself who's been in the industry for like 20 plus years. We need to be able to pull this black wire, right? And if you've ever noticed when you're like trying to unwind a cord or a hose or wind it up, what do you have to do with it? You have to like give it a little twist or a turn or that sort of thing. You can't just wind like this, because what happens? It gets tangled. And if you've actually taken a look at it, the reason it gets tangled is because we're actually moving it from a two-dimensional object to a three-dimensional space, right? We're pulling it out. So we got to give it this little twist. And that's what I call a digital expedition. So we have to look at, how do we move things around? How do we define what I call the point of clarity? Move up the obstacle to the point of certainty, and then down the other side to the point of competency. What's the best way to cross the Grand Canyon? I've asked this question a few times on social media. What is the best way to cross the Grand Canyon? It's not always just walking down the canyon one side across the river and then back up the other side. It's not. It's taking a helicopter. It's taking an airplane. It's taking, a hang glider, right? So there's better ways. We have to think three-dimensionally, because that's important. That gives us the height. And if you've noticed, I talk a lot about airplane and aviation metaphors. In one of my previous careers, I was a ex-military pilot and then went on to aerospace engineering. This is like over 20 years ago. So aviation is part of what I've created my life around. So that's why I love to talk about airplanes and aviation, if anybody's wondering. But the point is that we have to look at, how do we actually move ahead, and how do we move up above what everybody else is doing, right? Because if we're doing the same thing, we're going down the same road, we're going to be encountering the exact same problems, and we're not going to make any difference. So those are the three elements that we need to look at: the point of clarity, the point of certainty, and the point of competency. We need to be able to develop these over time so that we can really move forward. So actually, let's move on to the next step.